Hello everyone. I can't believe it is still raining, but we have some exciting news today in the Hill House because we have had a visitor who you can see behind me. So Daisy, our elf, has come to our house and brought with us our Christmas tree. So our Hill family are very excited. I'm going to be reading you a story, and a story is from this book called The Winter's Tale. And this is a story that Adamson are going to be learning about over the next 2 weeks. And the story is called The White Bear King. The tale of the polar bear and the ice mountains come from the kingdom of Norway, a land of jagged coastline, high plateaus and deep forest valleys. Glaciers, ice caps and mountain tops stay frozen all year round. Highest of all the walls of stone and snow is Trevegan, the tallest vertical rock face in Europe. Once there was a girl who dreamed of a crown forged of flame-bright metal, crafted in tendrils and leaves of all the trees in the forest, golden oak, silver birch and copper beech. In her dream, where she wore the crown on her head, she felt she was standing in the centre of the world, blessing the land like a queen. When the girl woke up, all she wanted was to wear the crown again. Her father, the king, had goldsmiths made crowns of every kind, but not one of them matched the crown in her dream. The princess took to wandering alone in the forest. One day she went further than she had ever been before. She came to a glade where slanting rays of sun lit the silver birch and the green pine and made the snow sparkle. There, warming the fur, was a bear, a great white bear. The princess was not alarmed. She watched the way the bear moved, his strength and power, his ease and grace. She smiled as she watched him playing, rolling and wriggling, nosing the sunlit snow. He had something in his paws. What was it? The crown of her dreams. "Oh," said the princess, "I need that crown." But the bear answered, "The crown is not for sale, not for money nor gold." "Please," the princess cried, "I need it." "I will give you the crown," said the bear, "in return for your company. Will you come to the forest with me and agree to be my wife?" The princess looked beyond the limits of her father's lands to the dark forest stretching far away, wild and unknown. She looked into the bear's deep brown eyes and saw gentleness there. "Yes," she said, "I will." "Then in 3 days' time I will return," said the bear. When the king heard of this agreement, he summoned his bravest guards. When the bear returned for the princess, he was met with a rain of arrows from the king's army, but the bear battled them away like flies. The king saw that his army was no use. The promise must be kept. It was the tradition in those times for the eldest daughter to marry first, so the king sent his eldest daughter to the bear. Grimacing, she clambered onto the bear's back, and he began to run. "Have you ever sat softer?" asked the bear. "Have you ever seen so clear?" "Yes," said the first sister. "In my mother's chamber I sit softer, and in my father's palace I see more clearly." "Then you're not the one," said the bear, and he shook her down. 3 days later, the bear came again. The king sent out his second daughter. She clung onto the bear's back. "Have you ever sat softer? Have you ever seen so clear?" "Yes," said the second sister. "In my mother's chamber I sit softer, and in my father's palace I see more clearly." "Then you're not the one," he shouted. He shook her loose. For the 3rd time, the bear returned. With a beating heart, the youngest daughter put the crown on her head. It shone flame bright as she climbed onto the bear's back. He bounded deep into the forest. "Have you ever sat softer? he asked. The princess held onto the bear. She felt the powerful muscles moving beneath her. She sunk her fingers into the thick fur. No, I've never sat so soft. And have you ever seen so clear? Beneath the blazing crown, the girl's hair was full of wind. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes shone. She could see the whole forest laid out before her. No, I haven't seen so clear. Yes, you are the one, the bear said. They leapt through icy rivers, splashing sparkles, the princess laughing with delight. They slid down slopes and rolled in the snow. They climbed the hills and sat side by side in the sunset. They slept, curled together in mossy hollows. In the mornings, they greeted each other nose to nose, until at last they came to the home of the white bear. Rising from the black branches was a palace of white, its turrets shining in the winter sky. Inside, the rooms were bright with silver and gold and soft with silken pillows. The bear went out and the princess kept the fire alight. When it was night, the bear returned. But in the darkness, when the princess reached out to touch his fur, she touched not paws, but fingertips. By night, her bear husband was a human man, though she never saw his face. Within the year, the princess and the bear had a child, but no sooner was it born than the bear king took it away, and the princess did not see her child again. This happened 3 times. The princess begged her husband to explain, but he just shook his head. I cannot. I'm so sorry. The princess was heartbroken. All day long I'm alone. I long for family. Very well, said the bear. We will visit your parents. When her mother heard the princess's tale, she cried. A bear that changes at night is not a real bear. That's magic at work. Perhaps he's a troll. Take this candle. When he is asleep, light it and see his true face. That night the princess lit the candle. Beside her lay not a troll, but a prince. She leant to kiss his brow, and 3 hot drops of wax fell onto his skin, and he woke. What have you done? He cried. If you had loved me just as I am, the troll's hag spell would have been broken. But now her magic tightens, and I must become her husband. He pulled on his bearskin and sped away. The princess grabbed his fur, trying to haul herself onto his back, but the bear was so fast all she could do was hold on. Through the forest she held on, through thorns tore her clothes and scratched her skin. But at a bend in the path he swerved, and she was thrown onto the ground. The bear was gone. The princess walked and walked through the forest until she came to a cottage, and she knocked on the door. Inside was an old woman and a young girl. Have you seen a white bear? The princess asked. Yes, said the woman. He sped by here a day ago, but he was going so fast you won't catch him. Come in and rest. The princess rested her weary feet by the fire and smiled at the child. The child came closer, hugging a cat to her chest. She looked at the princess with shy eyes. Hello, little cat, said the princess, and she began to talk to the child. They shared stories of animals they'd seen in the forest and birds they'd heard in the hedgerows. The little girl took out a pair of silver scissors. She began to play with them, snipping the air. With every snip, reams of gold cloth rippled from the blades. Green silk, red velvet, white wool. The girl looked at the princess's torn clothes and she asked the old woman, May I make her a gift? So the princess left the cottage with the silver scissors. The princess walked through the forest until she came to a second cottage. Inside was an old woman and a young girl. Have you seen a white bear? The princess asked. Yes, said the woman. He sped by a day ago, but he was going so fast you won't catch him. The girl bounded up to the princess. Look what I can do. She turned a wobbly cartwheel. The princess clapped her hands delighted. The child took out a gold cup. She began to play with it, tilting it in the air. As it tipped, it filled with a drink. hot, sweet blackcurrant. The girl looked at the princess and asked the woman, "May I give her a gift?" So the princess left the cottage with the golden cup. The princess walked on through the forest until she came to a third cottage, and inside was an old woman and a young girl. "Have you seen a white bear?" the princess asked. "Yes," said the old woman. "He sped by here this morning, but he was going so fast you won't catch him. Come in and rest a moment." The girl showed the princess the treasures she'd found in the forest: a white feather, a yellow leaf, an acorn cup. The princess looked at everyone. She thanked the girl for showing them to her. Then the child took out a snow-white cloth. She flicked it through the air, and when it landed, it was covered with good things to eat. The girl said to the old woman, "She looks hungry. May I give her a gift?" So the princess went on, the scissors and the cup wrapped up in the cloth. She walked and walked and walked until she came to the edge of the forest, and before her rose a wall of rock glazed in ice. She reached out a finger to touch it, and then drew it back in pain. The sharp cold stung her skin. The rock was smooth as polished glass. The princess craned her neck, but she couldn't see the top. "Oh, it's impossible," she sighed. At the foot of the mountain was a fourth cottage. The princess knocked. A woman answered. She was dressed in rags, and hungry children pulled at her apron. "Come in," said the woman. "Though I have nothing to offer you but stones, I'm warming them in the kettle. I tell the children they are apples cooking, and it quiets them for a while." With a slip of the scissors, a tip of the cup, and a flick of the cloth, the family was soon clothed and well fed. "Thank you for your kindness," said the woman. "In return, I will help you. My husband is a master smith. He will make you a set of iron claws to climb the ice mountains." The next day, the princess stood at the foot of the mountain. She put on the claws. I wonder, as she flexed each finger into the iron tip, did she feel the deep growl low in her throat? Did she feel the fierce protective power of being a bear? Step after step, paw after paw, she climbed the unclimbable mountain. And at the very top of the mountain stood a castle. And at the window stood the troll hag. She was built like a boulder and had a granite scowl. The princess sat beneath the window and began to play with the silver scissors. Sumptuous fabrics slipped from the blades, purple silks and golden velvets. "Give me those!" shouted the troll hag. The wedding was in 3 days' time, and what a wedding gown those scissors would make. "The scissors are not for sale," said the princess, "not for money nor gold, but I will give them to you in return for one night with the prince." The troll agreed, for she had drugged the prince with a sleeping potion, and no matter how hard the princess shook him, he did not wake up. The next day the princess took out the cup. From its lips flowed pale ale and fine wine. "Give me that!" shouted the troll hag. "The cup is not for sale," said the princess, "not for money nor gold, but I will give it to you in return for one more night with the prince." The troll hag agreed, for again the prince was drugged, and no matter how loud the princess shouted, he did not wake up. But next door, the carpenter making the feasting table for the wedding heard the noise, and he told the prince. On the third morning, the princess shook out the snow-white cloth. Upon it lay a feast for a wedding. "Give me that!" cried the troll hag again. "The cloth is not for sale, not for money nor gold, but I will give it to you in return for one final night with the prince," replied the princess. And on the third night, when the princess drained the drink the troll had given him, he held the syrupy liquid in his mouth until she left the room. Then he spat it out. As night darkened, the troll sat listening. Was that a noise in the prince's room? She took out a long needle and pierced it deep into the prince's arm. But the prince did not flinch. The troll hag slammed the door behind her. The princess, hiding in the shadows, opened the door, and the prince and the princess were reunited at last. Together they made a plan. In the black of night, the prince woke the carpenter. They crept down to the bridge in front of the castle. One by one, they unscrewed the bolts and broke the planks. The next morning, the day of the wedding, the troll hag came stomping over the bridge, leading her bridesmaids behind her. Crack! The bridge broke. With a shriek, the troll hag fell. She sunk like a stone in the deep water of the moat and was never seen again. The prince and the princess returned home, and on the way, the prince stopped at the 3 cottages the princess had visited and collected the 3 little girls, their very own children. At last, the princess understood. The prince had taken the children into the forest to keep them safe from the troll hag. Little did he know the part the children would play in helping their mother to break the spell. At long last, their wedding was celebrated with feasting and dancing, music and merrymaking. The 3 daughters sang loudest of all. They both lived long and happy lives, reigning together side by side, the White Bear King and the Flame Bright Queen. So Adamson class, you're going to have 2 weeks of learning about that story in your writing. We are going to choose some of the other stories to read. I hope you enjoyed that one. Thank you for listening.